Hi, and welcome back to the shop. Today's video, well, isn't about machining. It's about transforming this old mountain bike of mine into an e-bike or an electric bike. Now, I say old mountain bike because it is an old mountain bike. It's about 40 years old, but it still functions very well. And that's why I want to transfer it or transform it into an e-bike, because it functions very well. Now, I'm an old guy and I don't function very well anymore, so I need a little help when I want to go for a ride. And well, an e-bike will give me that help, especially a pedal assist e-bike, because it gives you a good exercise and helps you, especially up those steeper hills. So that is what I want to do here. I've bought a kit from Bafang, Bafang is the name of the company that produces this kit, and well, I'm going to install it on my bike. So let's get this old bike out of the way and take a look at the components that I have here that I've laid out on the table. So here's what came with the kit. I have my 48 volt 17.5 amp battery. I have my display that's going to be set up on the handlebar so I can see what my settings are and how fast I'm going. I have my replacement brake handles, and that's important. We can't use the ones that are on the bike now because the brakes have to have a cutoff switch, a kill switch, so that when I do apply the brakes, the motor doesn't keep on turning. I don't want to be trying to stop the bike as the motor is still pushing on it. So those will replace the two ones that are there with these. Here I have my pass sensors. I have two, one for the right and one for the left. I only really need to use one, but they give you both sides because sometimes it won't fit on one, but it will fit on the other. So I'll have to choose the one I'm going to use for that. Front headlight, all the wiring that I need. I have my throttle because if I don't choose to use the assistance mode, but I want to go straight throttle, well, I have a throttle switch that'll be set up for that. I have my battery charger. I have my controller. Now this controller controls everything that's going on here. So it's central to the whole setup. It has all the wires already mounted, and I just have to connect the different color wires with the different colored connectors. This is just an empty box that mounts on the bike and in which I can set up my controller so that it doesn't get wet. New sprocket, and obviously my geared hub motor. And everything starts with the installation of the tire. Followed by the installation of the freewheel. So we're almost ready to set the wheel in the rear forks here. But there's two things that I'd like to mention about the rear forks on these old bikes. And the first is that they weren't designed for disc brakes, and the space between them isn't quite right for this wheel, which means that the wheel is offset a very small amount. But that gets on my nerves. So you can shim and play with washers, and it's quite easy to get it back on center. First thing. Second thing is that on these old bikes, the rear fork holds the derailleur bracket. Now there's a small screw here that sort of keeps it from moving when I take the wheel off, but basically what holds it in place is the wheel shaft. And it creates a point upon which or on which the shaft leans. The problem with that is there is no derailleur on the other side. And that means that the wheel, once you lean it back, it skews, and then you have to line it up by eye and tighten things down at the same time. It's a bit of a pain. So what I've done is, on the back side here, I've cut the end off of an old worn out derailleur, flipped it over, and set it in place so that it basically mirrors what I have on this first side. That gives me a point that's the same on both sides to lean the shaft onto. And well, it makes mounting the wheel a lot easier. If we look at the wheel's shaft, I can see that there's a small flat on each side of the shaft. And that, well, conforms to the hole in one of the main washers. And if you look at this washer, well, it has a tab on one side. And those flats, well, will slide into the groove of the rear forks. And, well, why is that? Well, because we don't want this shaft to turn. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's going to be a lot of force and torsion here. And, well, I want this washer to take up some of that force as well. That's why the hole has two flats on it as well. And, well, that tenon or tab, that'll really help to take up a lot of the torsion that's going to be on the shaft. You have to remember here that when you're pedaling your bike, the chain is pulling on the rear wheel and making it turn. But there's no actual torque on the shaft of the rear wheel. The torque really is on the wheel itself. Now, when this shaft is fixed into the rear forks and this motor is activated, well, that motor is going to be applying a lot of torque on this shaft. That's why I need to take care of that torque with the two flats and the tab that I have there. That also means, and be careful, that the original nuts that came with your bike won't fit on this shaft. This shaft has the same dimension, flat to flat, as the old shaft on your bike had, and that's how it fits into those grooves. But thread to thread in the other direction, well, it's a lot bigger than the original shaft. So you're going to need new nuts, and well, they come with the kit. So let's get the wheel mounted. Now, you can see that there's a small groove on the side of the shaft here where the electrical wire comes out. Make sure that that groove is pointing towards the front of the bike because it permits the wire to come out and bend around. Now we can move on to installing the other components. And we're going to start by removing the components on the handlebars. The brakes the handles, the gear change mechanism, and also I'm going to be removing the handlebar itself. Now this handlebar is almost straight and I'm not getting any younger, so I'm going to replace the handlebar with this much more profiled one that'll be a lot easier on my back. Now there's nothing special here going on, they're just normal components that I'm going to remove, so we'll blast through these operations. So the old handlebar is off, the new handlebar is on, and well, I have to now mount the different accessories. To make all of this more accessible to me, well, you can see that I've hung the bike, it's well hung onto the ceiling here, and well, that really helps with the work that I have to perform, and well, it helps me be a little less lonely because now I'm not the only thing in the shop that's well hung. Now, I'm going to put all the new accessories on, but I'm not going to tighten them down final or even try to adjust them. I'm just going to put them roughly where they're supposed to be. Once everything's on there and I'm satisfied that I haven't forgotten anything, well then I'll start adjusting and tightening things down. So we can start by installing the display, the power switch, as well as the assistance level adjustment. So we'll start with the brake lever, and that'll be followed by the rear derailleur adjustment here, the small washer, and finally, well, the handle. On the other side, we're going to install the throttle, the brake handle for the front brake, the front derailleur adjustment assembly, and finally the second handle. So those components are mounted but not positioned accurately, and they're definitely not tied down or tightened down. We'll be doing that when we get the bike off of the ceiling. What we have left to install here, well, is the battery. We have our controller. We have our pass, our pedal assist sensor to install. And then we have a lot of adjustment. But I'll let you in on a little secret. The battery isn't an easy fit here. The mounting screws for the water bottle on this 40-year-old bike, well, aren't where they are on the new modern bikes. So I'm going to have to make an intermediary part that'll be sandwiched between the battery and the frame. And that means, well, we're going to have to do some machining. And that's what we're going to be doing next time. So until then, have fun, be safe, and happy machining.